Okay, I'm gonna try and do this live and in one take, so bear with me if this is a little strange. I wanted to sort of add a supplemental to that last project I was working on about academia and the problems with it. I can't tell other people's stories because it's not my place of the racism, workplace bullying, rampant ableism of like lecturers and the process of getting a PhD and other stuff like that. But you know, I can tell my own story in as far as I want to or want to go into details of, so I thought I'd give that a little bit of a go. This might be stilted, it might be hard to understand. I've never said this to just a camera before, and when I said it to other people, it's usually in little bits, so please bear with me. So I got a master's degree straight out of 2016, I think it came out. Was it 2016? I think it must be. So no, it wasn't 25, it was 2014. already stumbling. So I got a master's degree in 2014, and after that I was spending a lot of time trying to get PhDs. Like, all I wanted to do was academia, and it still kind of is. It's still the only thing that really satisfies me work-wise. If I'm doing a different job, it really does bother me that I'm not doing it, and it sort of eats away at me. But that might be a little part of me having worked at some pretty shady places like arms manufacturers and stuff like that, that I just can't handle working at just from an ethical standpoint. I applied for a bunch of PhDs, didn't get any of them. Eventually I went back in the closet to try and improve my chances, and what do you know, it did. Turns out if you have a man's name, it's a lot easier to get an application. I know other people that had exactly the same qualifying, so they're exactly the same CVs as me that got offered things that I didn't even get a look in on, and that's okay. Like, I've got nothing against them. It's just part of the system and part of the way that the inequalities of the world outside sort of come in and intersect with the specific problems of academia itself. After that, I got offered PhD. I came to Liverpool, a city I'd never been to, and then I started working on it, and I was really happy to do it. I liked the project. Me and the supervisor seemed to get on quite well, and yeah, and I was just happy to be doing academic work again. I was happy doing my research. Didn't have a clue what I was doing at first, but I don't think anyone really does. And a lot of the ideas that I had were sort of shot down as it wasn't relevant to the project, and that was fine at the beginning. So yeah, and I was feeling okay about it. The move was really hard for me, but moves are always really hard. It really took a lot out of me emotionally. I didn't really have any friends in the city. I'd left Nottingham for Bristol for my master's, and it was really hard to leave that place and the friends I'd made. And so I was just kind of starting all over again, and in quite a stressful environment, which is all of it. The whole thing, once you start it, it's stress from beginning to end that'll probably eventually break you. Oh, hello. She's showing her wings. You can't see that on the camera. Hey, this is Lily. I got her afterwards. Say hi, Lily. No? No, hello. Yes, hello. Say hi to the camera. Oh, she likes it. Anyway. So yeah, I got in there, back in the closet, not doing great. I was feeling utterly shit having to be back in the closet. I was going around, people were calling me a guy's name, all that stuff. I just felt absolutely suffocated. So I came out as trans, and I resumed transitioning as I had been before, like socially and physically, even though I was still doing that part on the DL. Before that, I'd heard, before I turned up, that the supervisor had been bigging me up to his other colleagues to sort of using me as sort of like a wedge to sort of annoy them and bully them a little bit, saying like, oh, this person's coming and they have a PhD, they have a paper out in a Nature journal, which is true, it's not Nature itself, but it is a journal piece, and it's still to this point the biggest paper I've had, and the one I was most passionate about, to be honest, on dinosaur evolution. So that's that. That's my thing. Stop biting me. You hungry? No? She's not hungry. you're going to be very annoying for the whole thing. I think you probably are. So so I was being used as sort of like a stick to hit the other people in the office with, and I thought that was a little bit unusual. Like, I know one of them was very stressed all the time, used to get up very early. Workhorse was in the office from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. I thought that was just their way. I got a lot of stick around that time for not being in the office before it opened. Usually I come in like 10 and 11 because I was told at the start that you set your own hours, and I'm like, great, I'm a night owl. I usually work until 2-3 a.m. so this will be great. And I was constantly a little bit of a constant cycle of being told, oh yeah, it's fine theoretically, but I'd really like you to come in earlier, and me trying to do it and just not working because I was working until 3 a.m. every night. And then it got to a point where like one of my like idols was in Liverpool, like giving a talk, and I just fell asleep watching, and I was really interested, but I just couldn't keep my eyes open because I was just being so overworked. And during this point, I was set aside, just trying to do my work. I offered a few ideas that were shot down, and we ended up on this project that at the time I was like, this is kind of weird, but I thought it might be fun. So we were using like CT scans to look at animal feet. I'm really interested in foot evolution, so that was pretty cool. But we ended up really concentrating on that, spending quite a long time on it, at the point where it really consumed our lives. Like, I was working on that for like a good 2 years out of what's supposed to be a 3-year PhD, because my supervisor kept telling me to go back and add more to it and change it, and like, we really need to move on. We really need to move on. And like, I was being told no, no, no. I had some ideas of where we could go afterwards. I was told no, that's a bad idea, that's a bad idea. And who am I to judge? I'm not a professional scientist, I thought at the time. You PhD should be considered a professional scientist, but I was being told my ideas were bad, so they were bad. And then I was being told, you need to come up with ideas because I don't want to come up with all your ideas for you. And I came up with the ideas and they were bad, and then I wasn't coming up with any ideas, and it was a little bit confusing and stressful. But I figured that's just bosses, even though supposedly it's supposed to be colleagues with a supervisor, so there is that. Around this time I was hearing some buzzes about a friend of mine who was working for this person, that they were going to move back to their home country, and they were just stressed and they hated England and all of that. And I can understand that. The weather's fucking terrible. Like, honestly, apparently it wasn't that, but they left. So we had a couple of times talks before that. I thought we were quite close. They didn't think we were as close, and I can sort of see why. She's already distancing herself from all of that stuff. We had some moments where the supervisor would like scream at me, or like I would end up crying after a conversation with him, which happened quite a lot. Like, he to tell me just some really horrible shit, and then I just cry, and I was like, you're always stressed after his meetings. Does this happen to you a lot? And she just nodded silently, and I was just like, oh wow, okay, this is a stressful period. I'm trying to remember. There was something else I was going to say in regards to all of that stuff. This is the problem, because there's just so much. It's like 3 or 4 years of your life. It does eat up at you, and it does. Everything comes back and forth, and it's really hard to separate it into like a cohesive timeline. Yeah, it was tricky. It was difficult. I was told I didn't know what I was talking about. I was told I needed to. Went to a couple of conferences, had some nice times with people, and made new friends and all of that. One of the people there that was there with me was sort of trying to find a space where they belong, and they kept being chased out of the office, and like the supervisor wasn't making it much easier. During this time, a colleague of ours came over from a different country, didn't speak, English wasn't incredible. I mean, I could understand it perfectly fine. And the supervisor would constantly be there, like, especially after she left the room, saying how he couldn't understand her, how bad her English was, and how she's never going to be able to publish anything. And that's continued for a while because we kept going back and forth with edits. Eventually I became whenever I became friends with her, and when I was helping her edit her work, and like spending a lot of my time doing the edits for her that he should have been doing as someone who's meant to be looking after her. But he was bad-mouthing her and then turning around and just trying to tell her, there's no point you doing this. But she didn't understand, I think because she didn't want to understand, and we came to that sort of thing later where he was like really just laying into her about her English skills and her writing, which it wasn't perfect. It needed a lot of editing. But you can do it, and like telling people off for it isn't going to help anything. So I don't really know why that was. Anyway, so after a lot of that happened, I was trying to discuss different options for papers, but I couldn't get him to agree on a lot of people that the ideas I wanted to work with, especially if I was bringing up a female colleague. He really belittled every female colleague's work. I've never heard him say anything nice about a female colleague. He's always putting them down, saying how their science is bad. He does this to some male colleagues as well, especially like ones that aren't from England, but like a lot of the time it's like belittling female colleagues, especially people that he'd been like friends with apparently, and like to their face he'd be really like kind of friendly, and then but when he got away from them he'd be like, oh, their science is terrible. And he did that with the people in the lab, and it was very confusing. And we got to points where like I was sitting there, like I was being told I had to work through the weekends and stuff like that, which I was doing most of the time anyway, but like sometimes you just need a break. It took me a long time to actually start taking days off and nights off, and eventually it's just in your head, you know, you don't turn off from work whenever you're out the door, which was for me was like 7-8 p.m. I left the office, and all the way back I'd be thinking about what I needed to do, and I'd go to sleep and I'd try and get to sleep and not be able to sleep because I'm thinking about what I need to do, and I'd wake up thinking about what I need to do, and like you constantly stress, you never leave your work. Like even if you go away for a week, there's constantly like at one point I went to a conference, and on the first day he sent me an email telling me what I needed to do, and during that week, and it's like, okay, I've got a whole other thing I'm supposed to be doing right now, but that's the way it was. And then at some point during this, I got offered a date for major surgery, which I'd been waiting for a while, and I was quite happy to do it. Like I'd been going back and forth from Nottingham to Liverpool, getting a bunch of stuff done in the meantime, which ate up a lot of my time, and I just wanted to get this over with and get it done with. And I left. I actually won an award before I left. I was running pretty high on my own fumes a little bit, and went down to London, had this surgery, and you're supposed to take 3 months off afterwards. And I'd sort of negotiated taking a month off work, which is way less than you're supposed to do, and I offered it like that, and he was like, oh, if you're sure, like as long as you come back. And I'm like, yeah, of course I'll come back. It's a 3-month recovery period, so after like a month, I started trying to work again. It was quite difficult to get back in the swing of things, so it took me a little bit. And then I came back to Liverpool after like a month and a half, 2 months. I've been working a bit from home before that, and we had this meeting where I showed what I'd done so far. I'd been trying to work on a second thing because the whole time before that surgery, he'd been making me work on one paper, which I knew wasn't enough. And suddenly I came back and was like, you know, we've got no time. We've got no time to finish this. You've wasted so much time. And I'm like, okay. I didn't want to argue. I didn't say that I'd been arguing that we needed to do more stuff for a long time, but I didn't say it. I was a coward in the moment. And then he said, well, I showed him what I'd done, and I do the thing that I always do, which I sort of downplay what I'm doing, and I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially a lot of women do, like I feel like do that, sort of like talked out, like they're like, oh, it's nothing, it's not really that much. And I didn't mean that at the time. I was like trying to play it down because that's just how I talk. And he's looked at it and he said like, well, if you've not done a lot, why are you even here, you know? And we had to talk about what we needed to do, and I outlined what I wanted from what we got, which was held up by him not letting me do other things and him shooting my ideas down. He was like, listen, you can't, there's no point you even be like, why are you even here? Like, you're never going to finish. There's no point. You're not going to do this. There's no way you can do this. You might as well never come back. And he just walked out of the room thinking he'd been very reasonable, I'm sure. And I just cried all night, and I just decided then I'm just never going to speak to this person again. Never going to. It just broke me. He said, like, this is like my dream. And he just came in after I'd taken a major surgery, right? And I'd come back way earlier than I should have done. And he's there saying, oh, you might as well not come back if you're going to do something like this. And it's like, what, do something like what? Like, do work when I'm supposed to be recovering, like overwork myself? That's not good enough. It was very odd. And this was after the other person had left back to come back to their home country, and he didn't have her to take out his rage on, I suppose, because we'd had some talks before that about like he used to really rag on her sometimes, and I think she seemed to still think she was close to him. So we'll see. It's not her story's not mine to tell. I don't know if I just misperceive things. I don't know, but I noticed then that everything had been a little bit weird since I'd actually come out. Like when in the beginning we'd like go to the pub together and have like an all nice like little working atmosphere. He listened to more of my ideas, and then as soon as I came out, it sort of slowly the attitude changed, like to being like he stopped taking us out, he stopped being nice to us, he stopped trying to create a nice atmosphere in the lab, he stopped coming around, and he started referring to me as stupid and started like suggesting that I was dumb and that I didn't know what I was talking about, which had never happened before. I was always like talked about like I was like promising, and suddenly I was dumb and I couldn't do it, and there was no point me trying, which was very strange, especially because I suggested a lot of ideas that I thought were okay, and that's fine. But then I was told I was like harassed that I didn't have the right stuff for it. So there we go. After that, I spent a few months just not talking to him. I still kept working, and I was working the whole time. I was just trying to like I'll just get things done. I'll do the things that we were supposed to be doing, and I'll just hope it all works out in the end. So I just carried on. I knew people who had a lot worse than me. Like I knew someone who'd like been like actively like racially bullied, like more than one person, by their supervisors and by other students and my staff members. And I'm sure there are lots of stuff I didn't notice or even accidentally participated in at my own point in time, because that's how these things happen. But I didn't know how to deal with it, so I just didn't deal with it. And so I figured like this isn't wrong. Like I was just angry with him. I didn't figure there was a systemic problem or anything. This was just part of the idea of the overwork culture in academia, and the way that you were meant to see students like production robots rather than actual people who need time off when they've had major surgeries. And so I had a bunch of complications from this surgery. Like after this, I was doing fine, and then I came back and I developed a TMI warning. I developed an infection, and that had caused a little bit of a situation. And during this time, I was really, really struggling. And a lot of the stress just made it worse, because I felt like I had to work and I had to come in to the office every day when I was supposed to be resting for like at least a month and a half more. But I wasn't allowed to do that. But he had to see me and beam on my face. Like part of what his whole work ethic was that he comes in the morning, he makes sure you're all there doing the work, and every cuss of like we'd be here every like 20 minutes to an hour or so, he'd come in, make sure you're all working, and if you weren't, you'd really get it. Like if you come in and you're on Facebook, it's like, oh god, what are you doing? You're not working. It's like, well, we've got our own hours. So like there's a lot of mixed messaging going on, and the complications got worse and worse and worse, and I couldn't rest. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't take the time to recover like I needed. And so I went back to the hospital like 7-8 times for different things. Like I had so many different surgeries, and I still have things to this day. I still have pain where I shouldn't have pain, because I just irreparably hurt myself just by working myself to death at a time where I was supposed to be like resting and recovering, and I'd organized to rest and recover and was not allowed to do it. Just flat out not allowed to do it. And so after a while of this, I got an email saying, listen, I know we haven't talked in a while. It seems like you're scared of me or something. Like I would actively avoid the office when he was there. And I was doing this before I realized that I was pissed off with him as well. Like I would actively try, like I would, if he was coming in to the office for like something, I'd have that anxious like pain in my chest and stuff. Because he never had anything nice to say. Like it was always like something bad or neutral. Like I think he said well done once, and then he started doing it afterwards when I actually confronted him about the whole thing. But yeah, I was really struggling, and then we started meeting again just because like it just had to be done. Tried to save the projects. The whole thing we were supposed to be doing was involving like live animals in like a zoo. We were waiting a while to get the equipment we needed for that, and we got it. We kept delaying and delaying when we could go, and eventually we took one trip to the zoo. Got data for a few animals, not a whole lot, and not very usable. And yeah, and after that I was like, oh, when are we gonna come back? He's like, you're not gonna come back. This is it. We don't have time. We had like quite a lot more time, but whatever. I don't drive, so I can't go there and do that myself. Like I could go. Like I said, I'd get one of my housemates to drive, and he said no, I need to be there if I'm not trusting someone else's car with it, which is okay. It's meant to be my project, you know. And then we're not allowed to get the fieldwork, so I had fieldwork for like 4 animals for this. Well, it's supposed to be like the main thing of the paper. That was supposed to be like the whole project. And suddenly, like, it's this tiny paper, and we can't even really use that data. It's kind of shit. Sorry for whoever has to review that paper eventually. I don't think that data will end up in there. Yeah, and so we got back, and I just had to screen this out. We didn't even have enough for a PhD there, really. Like, I ended up doing a whole other thing with like the literature and dinosaur tracks and stuff like that, because I always wanted to bring up paleontology because that's my thing. And that's his thing as well, but he tells you off when you're doing paleontology. Like, if you were trying to talk about paleontology, but like, paleontology shit. Don't pay attention to it, paleontology's terrible. Biology, that's where it's at. All of his papers about paleontology, so whatever. And when I was trying to bring it back to paleontology all this time, when I was suggesting paleo projects, he shoot them down. It turns out later on, I don't know if he even realised this, one of the ideas I pitched to him, he ended up working on with someone else, with a student at a different university. And he did that with them, and I wasn't involved with it, I wasn't asked. Yeah, I felt very snubbed, you know. Yeah, this came on for a while. There's a lot of the same problems over and on again. Just treating me like absolute shit. If I had a meeting, it'd always be like me getting put down for something. It was not ideal. And after a while, like, I went to therapy. I had to get therapy because at some point I was upstairs, I had this knife in my hand, and I was going to cut myself, you know. It was like, it got that bad. Like, I was just like, I can't take this anymore. The stress is too much, the pain is too much. Like, I've irreparably ruined my body. I've destroyed my mind. I couldn't think, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. And I called my friend and I was like, listen, I need to change something. So I went and I got therapy. I got in the queue for therapy. Luckily in Liverpool, it's pretty okay with some of the services there. So I got through to CBT, and it was pointed out to me quite early on that he was the major source of a lot of my depression and anxiety and trauma. And so, like, when I was talking about like the stuff that happened the week always with him, you know, I didn't realize that it was a toxic situation. And then I was talking about it to my therapist, and she was like, you need to get away from this guy. Like, this guy's really, really bad for your health. Like, he's constantly giving you a bad self-image, constantly putting you down, constantly like belittling other people who you respect. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but that's not possible. And, you know, your supervisor is in charge of your whole situation. If he's your direct boss, and he's your line manager, you answer to him. And if you try and get someone else involved, like, you can't do that because he's the one that knows everything. And like, I know other people who had real problems, like real bad, like proper, like fucking blatant racism problems with their bosses. They couldn't get anything done about it. So I knew that nothing was going to come of something like that. So you just have to finish and like hope for the best. So I did what I could. This all came sort of ahead, and once I accepted this, I started to get better. I started to really work on myself therapy-wise. Like, I started really trying not to think of myself as this like hideous failure. Think that I was actually capable of something. Start actually taking people's compliments instead of just brushing them off because I was told by someone who I respected and who I was supposed to respect that I was just shit at what I was doing, and what I was doing was what I loved. So everything that I sort of pictured, the imageability of yourself as like a scientist, a paleontologist, whatever, suddenly you're shit at that. And I didn't want to do anything else. I didn't want to leave academia because I love it. Like, I genuinely do. And like the bits of it that I love, I still love. And I'm never going to stop loving it. It's just certain people, you know, this is why people say, like, when you're getting a PhD, always talk to the students of a supervisor before you accept it, because you need to know from their mouths, not from the supervisor's mouth, that they're suitable for you. Yeah, their mood matches you. Like, this might have been fine for someone else, but like for me, this just wasn't a relationship that was good, and it drove me to a very dark place, like quite quickly, like a dark place mentally, and also physical damage. Like, this is not even a joke. And then, so at some point we went to, there was this came to a head a little bit. We went to this conference, and you know, he'd gone there, like, he was talking to a lot of people that he said were shit at home. He walked past us, he would actively ignore us, insult us to people that were there. He would run past us when he was going to a bar to buy his old supervisor stuff, drinks, and not get us any, which is, you know, that's a choice, but I think it says a lot about the person. And then I ran into him insulting me to a colleague, like quite a senior colleague, and really laying into me about something, and he sort of turned around and he was like giggling, and he turned around and he was like, that paper we were working on, why did you come up with that? That's a weird idea. And I said, it was your idea, like, I didn't want to work on it. And he was like, oh yeah, and he just brushed it off. But he was just laughing at me about this idea for it, which is his, and he laid it on me because apparently it made him feel better. Whatever. I was pissed, but like, it was, these things happen, you know, like sometimes people are just a bit rude. And I knew he was a bit rude because he was always horrible about our colleagues, especially our female colleagues, and his students and all of that. Like, he'd talk about the Japanese woman we had, and how it was really cool now she was going to go to someone who spoke Japanese, because now he was going to be able to see how bad she really is at communicating, which is like, why would you say that about someone? Anyway, well, I had a talk that day, like that weekend, and I had quite a few people come with me with good things about that talk, and like, he actually said it went quite, like, we had a few people come out after, and they asked nice questions, and they was like, this talk was good, like nice to meet you, your work seems cool. I'm like, thank you very much, that's what I want to hear. He sort of brushed it, was like, yeah, it was okay. And then I didn't notice this, but my friend was sitting in the front row, and he said, like, you know, it's like, are you not angry? I'm like, what? And it's like, he was insulting you before the talk, and he was, like, I didn't think about it that way, it was just in the moment, because I was just kind of, you know, you go in a bit of a headspace before you go up and give a talk. But I came up there, and he just insulted me in front of the whole crowd. Like, he made like proper personal jabs at me at a conference before I went up to talk, and like, it was, that's really hurtful. Like, this is the moment where I get to show myself to the community and make a name for myself, and he's actively undermining me in front of a room of our colleagues where I'm supposed to be impressing. And at this conference is the person that he was giving the project to that we were talking about, and then, which went over my head, actively dismissing me, like making it hard for me to network because he's insulting me to other people and things like that. And then I have that moment where I was assaulted on stage, and then later on we ended up really talking about it, and we were both really got it, like, we both, like, he opened up to me and it was like, really shitty treatment by this guy, you know. And a lot of it's just like not expecting you to have your basic needs met. Like, if you're robots, cool, but like, people have emotional needs. That's a very strange thing to say it, but like, you're not allowed to sleep or eat or like work, have friends, like, to do work all the time. And if you're not, and even if you are, like, it's not good enough. Like, you're meant to be a productivity machine. And it's just really fucking weird, and like, it's not okay. Yeah, so eventually, I mean, like, after that, I was just done with it, and I accepted what had happened after that, because it wasn't just me saying this, it was someone else, like, saying, like, this is a bad person for this. I'm like, okay, cool, right, that's the way it is now. At some point we were having a meeting, and he was just laying into me about stuff and really, like, just being like, oh, this is terrible, like, why did you do this, why did you choose to do this? And I was just like, I don't need you to belittle me. And then he was like, well, I'm sorry if you thought I was belittling you. And I'm like, what would you want me to say? And then he sort of went to this weird, like, cold, emotional, like, face, and he was like, how are you actually doing anyway? Like trying to be a human being all of a sudden. And it was clear he didn't care. Like, I could see in his eyes he didn't give a shit. He was just mad that I'd called him out. And he left. And this is the thing that I forgot to mention earlier, which I was really thinking hard about. Because when we first got there, one of the things he made very clear at the start, he said, don't come to me with anything personal. Anything personal. I don't want to hear about your personal lives. I don't care how you're doing. I don't care how your life is. Don't come to that. We'll all work here. And I thought he was joking, but apparently not. So we're not allowed to talk about anything but work, which is strange, especially going to be taking me on social visits. And so suddenly he's pretending he's interested, and it's clear he's not. And he's told us specifically, that wasn't just the first time, several times he brought this up. He said, never tell me anything about yourself. Never tell me how you're doing. I don't care. I actively don't care how you're doing. And, you know, if you tell me, I just won't listen. And when other people did, like when this other student told him like a life change about to get your partner, he was like, why do I care? Oh, you're supposed to care because she's a person and she's a student, but whatever. And yeah, and then like at some point, like it was at my friend's Viva or something. He'd just been made like a higher up person like in postgraduate stuff, and he was meant to demonstrate his ability to deal with like mental health problems of students and stuff. And he asked someone I know, how do you think I can demonstrate that I've done good with mental health stuff? Like, you know me, you know my teaching style. And he was like, and apparently, like, I was told he said that my friend said, you know, like, I can't speak for Kat, but honestly, you've been kind of shit. He never brought that up to me. But he never, like, if he asked me, like, how can I demonstrate I've been really good with mental health, I'd be like, you can't. You actively told us you couldn't. He said depression wasn't real multiple times. He said mental illness isn't real. If a student is feeling depressed, they just need to buck up, you know, they just need to try harder. He's like, my generation, we never needed to do this. Like, if you're sad, you just get on with it. You know, this isn't an old guy. Like, he should know better, but that's just the way it is. And like, we had other moments, like he's just demonstrating like a hostile sort of environment for other people, like with the sexist call outs and stuff like that. And like any female colleague was automatically trash. And then we had this point where we were talking about some unrelated issue. He brought up this thing, and he was like trying to argue with us for quite a long time about police profiling was good actually. And me and my friend were bringing up the stats and stuff, and like stuff that shows like police profiling doesn't work. It just doesn't, like, it doesn't improve, it doesn't bring crime down. He's like, yeah, but hypothetically, if it did bring crime down, would it be good? And I'm like, I don't think you realise how, like, actually offensive this is. Like, it's proper, like, bad. And I thought about that for the rest of it. I was like, why would anyone bring that up? Like, it's a normal thing to do. But yeah, we dealt with it. I'm just trying to get through it and get out of there without screwing it out. I still need it, but like, I go back and forth with like the critiques and stuff, and we need to publish papers together, and it's fine. But like, I think that's a symptom. I think what people can hopefully learn about this environment from this testimony is just there's something rotten that runs through the process of, you know, getting a PhD and academia in general. And it's like this idea that we should be productivity machines. People are people, you know, you can't be expected to be doing everything all the time. And I think that breeds a resentment in some people that other people aren't working as hard as they should. In their heads be working, they don't deserve to be academics anymore. And I've been told that by this person and by other things like, oh, well, if you don't come in on weekends, you shouldn't even be in academia. And it's like, well, like, you're gonna have very, very few academics. And like, a lot of people work on weekends, you know? A lot of people need that money. You know, I ran out of funding in my third year, and then I had to like pay for all this shit myself. And he just expected me to stay in this place and live on not pay rent and like pay my rent and buy food and stuff with no money. He told me, don't apply for any postdocs until you've got your PhD certificate in hand. You had to be rich to make that work. Like, now I'm fucked. I've been doing a year of looking for postdocs, fucking nothing. And you know, I can't live. I got no salary. Like, who's gonna pay me? I've got fucking nothing. Like, I'm broke as fuck. Like, absolutely broke. And I talked to other people at that conference that we were talking about, and the lecturer said that's a crazy thing to say. You need to be applying for postdocs at least a year in advance of you finishing. And I'd never heard that before, and suddenly I asked everyone had that same opinion. But I was told the complete opposite, and then now here I am, destitute. You know. It's this idea that we're not people, people need to afford to pay rent and stuff, like people need money to live. You can't expect them to do that just because, like, on paper it would be better for applications if you do. No, that's not how it works. You know, this is the problem with, like, a sort of attitude that comes into academia a lot, of these people that think they're very, very rationally minded, but what they're doing is pretending we live in a world where social factors don't matter, where, like, it doesn't matter the colour of your skin or your gender or whatever, that's not going to affect you, but it does fucking affect you because people treat you that way, and people are in charge of the system. The system isn't a robot that processes things and is impartial, and even the robots we build for this stuff is programmed by humans with their biases in mind. You know, you can't ignore those social factors, and you can't pretend that people will go in their output PhD and onwards to the career of, like, a academic late down the line when you're expected to be publishing, like, how many papers a week. Sometimes these things take a while, and you're gonna have some real shitty research if you're expecting everyone to be putting in a bunch of papers all the time. Like, some of the best papers take years and years of prep, and a lot of this comes down to this idea of sort of the scientist as this, like, lone figure, this one smart person in a world of idiots. And so these people come in and they've been told the whole life that they're special because they're like not interested in sports, and the dudes, so obviously they're the cleverest person in the world because everyone assumes, like, a white guy who doesn't like sports is, like, devastatingly clever, because what else could you be? And they come and expected to be special every time, and they treat people like they're the smartest person in the room all the time, and sometimes they might be. But you don't treat people less because of that. Like, you don't treat people with contempt because you don't think they're on your level. Like, these are... She just stole my water. I was going to drink that. That's ended it. I'm sure there's a lot more to it. There's always every time I try and do one of these, try and put down this into words, there's always much more I think of. As soon as I turn off the camera, more examples of this sort of behaviour. But it goes beyond me, you know. They said I want to talk about other people's stories, but instances of, like, trying to get disabled people kicked off their course because they're not going to finish in time, or, like, you're not going to finish in time, so you need to be fired. It's like, no, you need more help. Not giving them the help that they need, or sitting in their meetings, they're always looking. It's just bad. And then not giving people maternity leave, so they, like, what are they going to do? Like, are they going to get money? You know, you can't treat people like they're robots, because there are other factors at it. Like, we have lives beyond our work, and if we want to have lives beyond our work, we need to be supported, both financially and emotionally. And when we go through, like, hard times, like surgery, recovery and stuff, you need to have some fucking empathy, and you need to, like, give them the space and the financial support to pay the rent during that time and stuff like that. Like, it's not easy. Like, I got this acting job, like, halfway, like, towards the end, and I got, like, an injection of money that was the only reason I managed to finish my PhD. In the last couple of months there, I wasn't even paying rent. I was living on someone's spare room, and I was really overstaying my welcome, but I needed to finish, and yeah. I think there is absolutely a culture of bullying that is brought about by this idea of the academic as this perfect, rational man that's right about everything. But it goes beyond that, and it is certain individuals, but I think beyond that is a systemic thing, and it's a product of the way the foundations of academia was built on, this, like, idea of this old white Victorian man going in with his brilliant mind and solving the world's problems in one lifetime, and then going off and doing 5,000 different other projects. That's not what it's like anymore. These things are supposed to be collaborative. They're supposed to be, like, for all people. You know, this is an idea that, like, it's part of the mindset of just some of these people that go into it and they're like, this, I am now king. I'm going to this world and I am it. You know, I'm the Don. And they come in and they're expecting like everyone to fall over themselves and kiss their toes and tell them how very fucking clever they are. You can't. Like, at the end of the day, it's still a job and these are people you're working with. Like, treat them with fucking respect. Like, you don't keep friends by treating them like they're not worth things, or like they can't be allowed leeway for needing a rest, or God forbid, like help from an accident. Like, you wouldn't treat your friends like that. So why would you treat your co-workers like that? And if you do treat your friends like that, I have some bad news for you about your friends, and then they're probably going to consider you a friend. I should probably stop now because I could go on about this forever, and I'm sure there's 50 other things that I'll come up with as soon as this is over that happened, but I can't go on forever. I just wanted to add a personal note to add to the sort of overly scripted thing that I was talking about before. All right, peace.